I can see, the close friends and family table is here. The co-workers obligated to be here missing work. It's interesting. We kind of thought we'd be talking to a couple guys on bar stools. Some of this is a little ironic for us, as we talk about Roger being, Commissioner of Education and somebody who over the years has been directly or indirectly responsible for thousands and thousands, maybe millions if as old as he is, but many children's education. The irony strikes us that I don't want to necessarily speak for my brother, but he's not necessarily allowed around my kids without adult supervision. When you have children, a lot of times we wonder, where are they, what are they getting into, and things like that. And for us, it's much more common when Roger's around to say, where's Roger? Is anybody watching Roger? A lot of times in my house, we'll just blink. This is our time this week. So a lot of times, we'll hear things like, don't worry, Isaac's watching. So Isaac is my 5-year-old son. So, I just kind of wanted to, a little bit of an insult actually for all of you guys, that just, your Commissioner of Education, in my book at least, is outranked by a 5-year-old on the responsibility ladder. Growing up with Roger is obviously an experience. But a lot of people growing up, have problems with their parents, taking work home, with them, and not being able to separate the work life from the home life and things like that. So, upon the announcement when Roger was retiring, I read a couple articles, also interviews, people talking about him, and talking about just his patience and his compassion and all this stuff. And so, it's very clear to me that we did not have that issue. Tyler will talk a little bit more about your patience.
I've seen my father, witnessed my father being compassionate, patient, caring, understanding, and rational. And I've often wondered if everyone was going to figure out that that's not really how he is. Turns out he's made a career of fooling people. I know he was disappointed when I went to law school. I was supposed to be a doctor like him. And he informed me that a JD, of course, was the lowest form of doctorate. This was among, many of the facts that he informed us about growing up. And I think what I've witnessed with Dad, what I've tried to find in my life is that ideal job that fulfills you, suits your talents, suits your limitations. And I think he's found that. As an administrator, he has the support of so many wonderful people who can handle all of those details and work. And he had that growing up with us. He practiced delegating many a task to us. He would go outside and use his electric trimmer to trim all the hedges in the yard, and then would come in 20 minutes later and say, okay boys, I did my part, the hard work is done, now go pick up all the branches. We also learned growing up that the small stuff, people say don't sweat the small stuff. I don't know if Dad ever heard anyone say that, because our experience growing up is when it came to big things, big ideas, he was a great father. He was like the Brady Bunch did. Adequate. He was adequate. But when it came to small things, he had a tendency to maybe not react rationally. And I'll give you a brief example. It involves my operation of his car. I was often told growing up that I had the privilege of driving his car. It was never my car, it was always his car. And I'll tell you 2 brief stories that highlight this. And the first is, we lived in they still do in the town of Elkhorn, and Dad knew all the police officers. And we witnessed growing up how well he knew all the police officers, because he would routinely roll through stop signs and wave at police officers. And then would wave back. They were suggestions, yes. Those signs were all just suggestions for him. Turns out for us. So one day I came home from school. I was coming home from school, and I pulled out of the high school parking lot, and I rolled through a stop sign. I saw the police officer wave. He turned his lights on. I figured he wanted to wave back, and we had a discussion at the car, and Danker said, you know, you're Dr. Breed's kid, aren't you? I said, yes, sir. Thinking this was great. He's friends with, you know, the police. Danker said, all right, I'm just going to give you a warning. I said, well, this is fantastic. No ticket, no nothing, just a warning. I drive home, you know, I'm thinking this is a good day. My parents, this was interesting. They start on this, hey, how was your day? Good, it was great. Anything you want to tell us about today? Nope, not. Danker had called my dad and said, I just met your son on the highway. So after Dad boxed me in, as clever as he is, on this one, he flew off the handle. Said, well, that's it. You're never driving again. You're not driving until you're 40. I couldn't quite figure out how he was going to regulate that. At some point, he said, I'm taking the car back, and that is it. And like most disciplinary matters in our house, we then went into closed session with Judy to talk about things, and then they came out and announced what was clearly Roger's decision about the discipline. And apparently we used to kind of listen at the door to those discussions to see how it was going to work out for us. And what Mom told Dad was, well, that's fine, Roger, and you can do all that, but he's got swing choir tomorrow morning at 7 a.m., and then you can pick him up after soccer practice, get him something to eat, and then he's got to be back up to the high school for a National Honor Society meeting that night. So as long as you're going to transport him to all those activities, then I think the restrictions are fine. And Dad came out and said, I've thought about it. And you can only drive to school and home. And I said, okay. And the other example, to give you the good part of that, but although I was skeptical the entire time, was when I wrecked his car. Well, I didn't so much. Somebody hit me. I just placed my vehicle in front of theirs. And remember, I went to law school. So the police officer came out to the scene. No one was hurt, thank goodness. There was damage to both vehicles. The other guy couldn't have been nicer. And the police officer was there, and I was terrified. And thought, you know, I've got to call my parents. Didn't need to call my parents. So I did. Ring, ring. Please, Mom, answer. Please, Mom. The first time in my childhood that my father ever answered the phone, hello, you know, and I said, Dad, well, you know, I've been in an accident. And I told the officer, I said, is there any way you can just arrest me now? Make this call with bars between me and my dad. And he said, no, it's not going to work that way. In fact, I'm not even going to issue you a ticket. It was an accident. Just call your dad. And I said, no, really, I think I'd prefer to be arrested. Maybe I could sleep at your house tonight. And so my dad says, I say this to my dad, remembering the rolling through the stop sign thing and thinking this is going to be way worse. And he says, well, son, is everyone all right? I said, yes. He said, well, cars can be fixed, but people can't. And I'm not. And my first thought was, oh my God, he's going to kill me. He's doing this to trick the officer so that they let me go with him so he can kill me because I wrecked his car. So that's the end of my little piece there. I think Adam's got more to talk about, Dad. We're going to discuss some important developments in the history of man and the development of Breed family.
Yeah, so there wasn't always a time when I ridiculed Roger mercilessly and with good cause. At one point in my life, I thought my dad was the smartest person on the planet, and you know, not just the way that kids do. You know, my dad's smarter than you, stronger than you, yada yada yada. No, this was like I had legitimate reasons for this. I mean, he had answers for everything. You know, if I asked him questions, he always gave me detailed explanations. Too detailed. But you know, always had a lot of information. You know, Mount Everest, it's not the tallest peak in the world. You know, it's 29,029 feet. You know, and it was originally estimated to only be 29, 22, but that was because this guy did not. And so, even things like, Jeopardy and Trivial Pursuit, games like that, they were no match for him, and it wasn't because of all the questions he got right. It was because of all the reasons he had for why the game was wrong. So he would explain, well, they're obviously using, John Smith's interpretation of this as opposed to, the natural history book here. I'm like, yeah, obviously, that's very clear. And so, he was always so convincing, so sure of himself. So, it was kind of a sad day in my life that, September 7th, 1998, and it's not an overly popular date in history. I'm sure Roger would make something of what happened on that day. But what it was the day that Google was actually introduced to the world. And so, all of a sudden, we had an instant Roger fact checker. Long story short, he makes a lot of stuff.
We can check it on Google.
I do, and it's not that he doesn't know a lot of useless information, because he does. Believe me.
Very useless.
It's the confidence with which he delivers the answer to a question he clearly doesn't know the answer to.
The longer the answer, the more crap is involved.
That's right. He really should have had us out when he started this. He could have filled you in. I do remember him dispensing advice and information to us over the years. I'd ask him about a date in history that I knew he knew, right up his alley, and he would refer me to 3 learned texts and, a couple of movies I could watch, and all I wanted was the date the French Revolution began. And he would, give me that. I also remember a trip to the East Coast, which was going through some Civil War battlefields, which is like Dad's Mecca, and
Extremely fun for an 8-year-old.
right. Only slightly more fun for a 13-year-old. Yeah. And I remember he turned an hour and a half driving tour into about 6 hours, because we would drive to what appeared to be a grassy field, and then that's right. And then a learned historian would read from a historical text on the tape about what battle took place there, and then Dad would pause it 3 or 4 times to fill in, expand, correct whatever the historian had to say. So this was the story of our childhood. These are the places we got to go, and I've grown to appreciate that, and grown to learn that I won't subject my kids to that. But I've got you to deliver them to.
All right, so, long story short with all of that, I went from thinking that this retirement was going to go very differently for me, not so much caring about Roger, but I went from thinking that his retirement would involve some sort of, conquering of Jeopardy, and this huge inheritance coming my way. Now it's more so that I'm, just worried to death that I can't, undo all of the stuff that he's put into my head over these years. So, and all joking aside, because I was told by my mother that I had to be somewhat nice. But you'll find out that this is, the first, 75% of my thing is quite natural to me, to tell you the truth, and I'll pick it up later if anybody wants to hear more. But, obviously he's had a, really big impact on my life. Not so much in the, the words of wisdom, not a lot of, my dad always told me this type of things, because I think, as we've seen, I didn't listen to much of what he said after a certain day, and that was a good decision on my part. But I got to see the way that he lived his life. I got to see how he treated his friends, his coworkers, waiters at restaurants, complete strangers. I got to see firsthand what being a quality person is all about. So, well, I never had him in a classroom setting, but thank God. I can safely say that he's the best teacher I've ever had. And while he's officially ending his career in education, I just want him to know that I'm not done learning from him yet. So, congratulations.
This won't take nearly as long as the rest of this stuff. I found it very interesting growing up, and probably the most important lesson I learned, and I think a lot of this was echoing what Adam and I said, it wasn't in what he said, it was in how he lived that we learned from. You know, he told us all kinds of things that we later found out may or may not have been accurate, but I think he's got a great heart, he's got a huge heart. He loves what he does, he loves all of you, you know, and he loves all of us. And it was very interesting for me growing up in that household. It's like a master's education and upper-level administration, having a superintendent and a teacher fighting over the dinner table about education issues. Mom always won. You know, I felt this strange thing as a kid. I felt a little bit discouraged from going into education from my parents. You know, underappreciated, overworked, underpaid, you know, maybe you could do something better. But the odd thing was, those were some of the things Dad might say, but if you watch how he lived, he wouldn't have done anything else, you know, and neither would my mom. They found their love, you know, in each other, they found their love in their work, and they taught us to love life, love your work, and love each other, and couldn't ask for more. So, thank you.